Hello and welcome to episode 378 of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. My name is Pilar Ortiz and I am continuing this year with the season on Booknotes, where I share my notes with you of books I've read and the notes I've made on them, mainly on my Kindle. And I was hoping to be here earlier behind the microphone, but I got the flu. It really knocked me over. So I've got actually two books today that I want to talk to you about, and then afterwards we'll go into my personal updates. So the first book is Make Time, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day by Knapp and John Zeratsky. And I like this book very much because of the drawings it's got. It's very cartoony-like. The drawings are very cartoon-like, and so I studied it a lot when I was doing more cartoons, I suppose. Anyway, this was going to be the main book for the episode, but I realized afterwards that I don't have enough notes. It's a book on productivity, very light, but I really enjoyed it, and it's co-written. It's got two authors. They were both ex-Googles, I think, and it's really nice if you're a writer and you like to just read books for their voice, or if you are someone who enjoys productivity books, I think you might enjoy the fact that this was written by two people. And it's really sweet. It's very funny. It's very light. And there's only a few things that I want to read to you. One is this thing that those of you who have lots of projects that they do for themselves and who also work on projects with others might resonate with this one. Being more productive didn't mean I was doing the most important work. It only meant I was reacting to other people's priorities faster. It does though, because it does feel, doesn't it feel great when somebody asks you to do something, or when you know someone is waiting for something and you finish it and you send it off. But that probably delays your own work, and it doesn't mean that the work that you're doing with the other person is more urgent, more important, more stick whatever adjective you want. It just means for some of us that accountability buzz, hey, let's call it accountability buzz, is quite strong. And so we gravitate there, and as a result, very few of our projects get done. Not speaking from experience now, of course, because I'm doing most of my projects on my own. But it is true that anything that comes from an outside source, I'm bound to react more quickly. And then I've got one that is probably, well, it's very pertinent to today, and it's something that I have started to implement some version of in my own life. And it is referring, in the book, of course, it's referring to the distraction of doom scrolling through the headlines. And the author suggests, will that headline change any decisions you make today? And that's about when we get stuck on a headline. Yeah, I think we do need to know what's going on with the world, but definitely, again, speaking from experience, sometimes I just get caught in the headlines, and then I think, actually, this is not something I'm going to do anything about, and it's probably not going to change some of the stuff I do. And then on top of that, following from that, we have reacting to what's in front of you is always easier than doing what you intend. Again, I don't know, some of you I know are amazing focusers and you can do something, but for me, I'm going to do something else takes my attention, and sometimes I'm halfway through that second thing when I realize, hang on, I wasn't meant to be doing this. Let me redirect and go back to what I need to be getting on with. And then one more, which is, well, it's a pet hate and a pet peeve, and I am not going to spend too much time on it, but just in case some of you have this as well, you can nod with me. Emails that get sent as if they were direct messages or as if they were phone calls. Only the other day I received an email and I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll either act on that later or I'm not sure I need to act on it. And then just like an hour and a half later, another email saying, oh, can you please answer this email? Well, pick up the phone. And I'm not talking somebody who is messaging me from a very difficult situation that they absolutely have to message me because they can't pick up the phone, or who is in a completely different time zone. But it's this thing still. We've lost it now. Email has replaced any kind of real-time communication, and the phone, I don't know, when was the last time your phone rang? So anyway, I like this quote from the book, which says, taking control of your inbox requires a mental shift from as fast as possible to as slow as you can get away with. So that was Make Time, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day by Knapp and John Zeratsky. Right, I'm going to go for a longer one now, and it's related because it's still about time, about our perception of time, and about the decisions that we make in how we use our time. And I'm sure many of you have read this book. I really enjoyed it, and it is by an author, journalist who I really admire. I think I've read almost everything he's written since since I read. I think what was it called? It was called Help something, and the original book cover had a turtle on its back, and it was all about help books. Very, very funny. Self-help book, sorry. And it was very funny. And I still have in my library his latest one, which is Meditation for Mortals, I think it was called. So today, I am looking at 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkman. And it has this subtitle, Embrace Your Limits, Change Your Life, Make Your 4,000 Weeks Count. That subtitle makes it sound a little bit like a productivity book, but it's not. It's more of again, with Burkman, it's commentary. It's philosophy. And of course, there is advice. And the reason why I wanted to share this is because this is a bit of a pushback on the classic productivity rhetoric of let's get as much done as fast as possible. I know productivity is about doing the things that need to be done and doing the right things, but we still have that sense, at least on a lot of the things I see online and that I hear people talk about, that to be productive still has this feeling of doing a lot of things. And also, of course, we have the whole generative AI conversation, which a lot of it still is about let's get generative AI so we can do more things in the same amount of time, rather than so that we can do the same things in the least amount of time and get on with our lives. Anyway, okay, let me start with this one. It's somehow vastly more aggravating to wait 2 minutes for the microwave than 2 hours for the oven, or 10 seconds for a slow-loading web page versus 3 days to receive the same information by post. I like that because I find myself getting so impatient when a web page is not loading. And I think that it's all about expectations, isn't it? It's about how long we should think something needs to take. And that is where our impatience comes from. And I think the same in anything that we're doing. If I think it's going to take me 5 minutes to write an email, and then because I have so many problems with the tech, or because I just can't find the right words, or X, Y, Z, it takes me half an hour, I get impatient. But if I'm going to work on a chapter of a book, I don't get impatient because I know it's going to take ages. So, yeah, I mean, the whole premise of this book is that we have 4,000 weeks to live, and we just need to make the most out of it. And part of that is accepting that we don't have time forever, that our time is not indefinite, that our time is finite, and therefore let's pull back. I'm not even going to say stop. Let's pull back on this thing of trying to hack our life so we can do loads and loads and loads of things where actually our time is finite. There we go. Right. Let's have a look at more quotes here. This one talks about autonomy, and I'll tell you in a second why it's really resonating with me at the moment. Our culture's ideal is that you alone should control your schedule, doing whatever you prefer, whenever you want. because it's scary to confront the truth that almost everything worth doing, from marriage and parenting to business or politics, depends on cooperating with others, and therefore on exposing yourself to the emotional uncertainties of relationships. I mean, to be honest, there's so much in there. I thought it was about autonomy, but actually there's a lot more. If you are familiar with self-determination theory of motivation, Dechi and Ryan said it is autonomy, competence, and relatedness that fuels our inner motivation. And of course, there's always been this tension, and actually it wasn't until I read this that it struck me, the tension between autonomy and relatedness. We want to feel in charge of our own destiny, but we also want to feel we have a connection with others of some sort. I always used to come back to this when I was looking at visible teamwork and its linked to motivation, that some of the practices we might do for relatedness can affect our autonomy and the other way around. And here it's really, Oliver Burkman's put it very clearly. There is that tension always between autonomy and relatedness. And in the book I'm writing at the moment, All the World's a Workplace, ta-da! Please go over to virtualnotdistant.com, look for the coming soon tab and enter your name there so that I can tell you when it's published, which will be around June 2026. Anyway, looking at All the World's a Workplace, when I'm talking about autonomy, I remind us that autonomy doesn't, especially in the workplace, autonomy doesn't equate to independence, because we want to be interdependent if we want to collaborate, unless we're doing a job where we can basically work on our own. But even then, some of us still want to feel some kind of collaboration. And in the world of remote work, we don't want the fact that we're always talking about autonomy in remote. We don't want that to signal that remote work immediately is not collaborative. So I like this. I like how he puts this thing of, we want to be autonomous, but actually we also want to have these relationships with people. And the fact that he says the uncertainties of relationships, because that's also sometimes what can make us feel less autonomous, because we know what we want. Sometimes we might have a plan of how to achieve it, but if it involves other people, that brings uncertainty into it, which, doesn't really help. Okay, so let's carry on with, again, this concept of how long do things take. I quite like this. Another quote. Meaningful productivity often comes not from hurrying things up, but from letting them take the time they take, surrendering to what in German has been called Eigenzeit, or the time inherent to a process itself. This reminds me of something that we talk about a lot in creative processes, trusting the process. And for me, this is that sometimes it's understanding that the process takes time. Just by hurrying something up, it's not going to maybe be done faster. It's probably not going to get done better. And that things take as long as they take. It doesn't mean that we just fall asleep on them. It doesn't mean that we procrastinate on them. Although, of course, some would say that procrastination is really important in some processes because it helps us to move away from what we're doing and then come back to it. So again, it really depends, but I really like that. And I didn't know that there was a German word, which I've probably butchered, but hey ho. I really thought of my writing as well with that, where I've just learned to do that. And these books, they take years, but you know what? They take as long as they take. And some books take longer than others. And some books, I know how to accelerate that process because I've learned more about my writing. And I've seen that some bits that take very long can be shortened. And that just helps me to get to where I want to faster. It doesn't compromise quality, it doesn't compromise creativity, but it just makes me more laser focused instead of allowing my rambling brain to go off on one. But again, we all have these things, and it's just good to have a reminder that things take as long as they take. And well, I'm just going down my list of notes. This one goes back to what I was saying right at the beginning. Quote, "The technologies we use to try to get on top of everything always fail us in the end because they increase the size of the everything of which we're trying to get on top." Right, here we go. Here is where we get into the depths of what the book is about. So I've got 4 different quotes and I'm just going to read them. I'm going to weave them in, one into the other. "It is by consciously confronting the certainty of death and what follows from the certainty of death that we finally become truly present for our lives. It's not that you've been cheated out of an unlimited supply of time. Maybe it's almost incomprehensibly miraculous to have been granted any time at all." And then quoting someone else, "If your whole life is borrowed time, then wouldn't it make more sense to speak not of having to make such choices, but of getting to make them? The acceleration that sometimes arises when you grasp this truth about finitude has been called the joy of missing out." I have to look for that joy. And yeah, I think I am not at the joy of missing out yet, but I've learned to know that I can't do everything. I'm going to miss out on a lot. A short one for now. "What you pay attention to will define for you what reality is." And a big chunk coming. So we're going a little bit from the bigger picture to the more granular in a way. So we're coming down now into the day-to-day almost. Okay. "Why exactly are we rendered so uncomfortable by concentrating on things that matter, the things we thought we wanted to do with our lives, that we'd rather flee into distractions, which by definition are what we don't want to be doing with our lives? The more common issue is one of boredom, which often arises without explanation. Suddenly, the thing you'd resolved to do because it mattered to you to do it feels so staggeringly tedious that you can't bear to focus on it for one moment more." Why is that? I have to say that used to happen to me a lot more than it does now. But why? Why is it, Oliver? When you try to focus on something you deem important, you're forced to face your limits, an experience that feels especially uncomfortable precisely because the task at hand is one you value so much. You are obliged to give up your godlike fantasies and to experience your lack of power over things you care about. All right, after those longer chunks, I've got some random ones here for you. 1. Social psychologists call the inability to rest idleness aversion. I have that sometimes. I really want to rest, but I'm like, I should be working. I don't know. Quote, "In order to be a source of true fulfillment, a good hobby probably should feel a little embarrassing. That's a sign you're doing it for its own sake, rather than for some socially sanctioned outcome." Another one that will resonate. "In a world geared for hurry, the capacity to resist the urge to hurry, to allow things to take the time they take, is a way to gain purchase on the world, to do the work that counts, and to derive satisfaction from the doing itself instead of deferring all your fulfillment to the future." Yes, that's why I always say don't do anything, creatively or anything that doesn't have a sure outcome. If you're not enjoying the process, if you're going to just wait till you get that outcome at the end, the outcome might never come. So enjoy the process. And one more little pearl of wisdom. If you're willing to endure the discomfort of not knowing, a solution will often present itself. I'm going to remember that one. And then some really small ones. There's quite a mention of COVID at some point because I think the author was writing some of the book during COVID, and it refers to it as the great pause. It's really lovely. And it also talks about cosmic insignificance therapy, which is an invitation to face the truth about your irrelevance in the grand scheme of things. cosmic insignificance therapy. It does help. Right, and here is the final quote, and then I will go over to my personal updates. Once you no longer need to convince yourself that you'll do everything that needs doing, you're free to focus on doing a few things that count. All right, well, once again, that was 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkman, and do let me know if you grab it, because it's a really... it's not a light read, but it's really easy to read, and I really enjoyed it. So let me know, pilar@virtualnotdistant.com. That email is still in use, even though the company doesn't really exist anymore. But the site is there because, well, I'm still using it. But before I get into that, I am reading a novel that I'm really enjoying. It's in first person, and it's told by the sister of a man, because it's important that they are brother and sister. And it starts, say, in the present when she's an adult, and then it goes back into when she's younger as a family. And I'm really, really loving it. It is really warm. It's not mystery. It's not a mystery, although there is something that you're waiting to see how it happens. I am really, really enjoying it. It's called In a Good Light, and it's by Clare Chambers. I think I've read something by her before. And again, it's just really a really warm book, so recommend it. Okay, so let's go to my updates. Well, one of the things I'm going to be using Virtual Not Distant for is... I've got a new idea for another product. So it will not surprise many of you if I say Pilates for remote workers. What do you think? I've been for a very long while, well, ever since I started to train to be a Pilates teacher, and then as I've been teaching it, which is going to be almost a year soon, I've been thinking, okay, how can I put out my own, I'm not even calling it a brand of Pilates, but my own take on Pilates, which is very much about the importance of moving differently for a session, whether however long you're doing your Pilates, moving yourself, your body, especially your spine, in ways that otherwise you will not move it in. Because that's really what this is for me. It's not just about being fit and developing the core strength and being flexible, all these things that we know it does. But for me in particular, it's almost like dance. We're just getting the body to move in different ways so that we remember that we can move in those ways. Anyway, and I was thinking I want to do something with it. First, I wanted to bring it into the actor training practice, because there's a lot that is useful in many ways. Breath, voice in particular, body awareness, again, for creating characters from a neutral position. And then I thought about bringing it to writers, because I am so immersed in the writing process at the moment, but I don't have any place, any profile. I'm not visible at all in the writing community. Nobody knows me, and why? I haven't been vocal about it, about the fact that I'm a writer. I don't write that often. So, and then of course at some point it hit me. It's knowledge workers that I think can really do with it. I'm thinking audio products. So again, people who are at the screen a lot probably could benefit from taking some stuff, some instruction just through audio. And then I thought, hang on, I've got all this group of people that I have access to because I've been talking to them for ages, who are remote workers of some shape or form. So there, I am gradually thinking about what to do. So what I will do, I'm going to open some kind of newsletter, kind of blog thing over on Substack, because it's got notes, it's got a chat as well, but it's also Substack, as well as the long form blog posts, also has a way of communicating short thoughts and sharing things quickly, which I quite like. It's almost like, for me, like your own Twitter thread. Twitter, when it was great. And I miss that, because sometimes I just want to send small things out into the world. And I think that would be good. It means I can continue to talk and pontificate about remote work and alternative ways of working, and the reminder that there is not one way of working, and we just need to accept that more are valid than we thought. I came across something on LinkedIn the other day, and we're still there. We're still, I mean, how many years after so many people trying it, and we're still having to fight to say, no, it works for some people. It works. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for you because you didn't have time to do it properly. No, I'm joking. It doesn't work for you because it doesn't give you what you need, but it's giving a lot of people what they need, and therefore it is valid. So you see, I still have a lot to say about remote work, and I just hope that through this new product for remote workers, I can keep both things going. I can speak to remote workers about something that probably matters to them. Not always. Some remote workers are just remote workers and they don't really mind how they work. But others, some of us feel quite strongly about the fact that it should be a form of working available to as many people as want it, really, although it's not always possible. But hey. So virtualnotdistant.com, there you should be able to find something about Pilates for remote workers at some point in 2026. Meanwhile, I've received the feedback back from the first-time readers for All the World's a Workplace. Thank you so much. I have to say big thanks, especially to Mark, Simon, and Richard, and Jack Nillis, who have given me loads to think about. And I am working through it now, and I've got about a month to work through it and then to go back to the text, read through it myself. At the same time, I'm adding all the references, which I just left out because I just couldn't be doing all of that yet. And what else? Yes, and then I need to do something with the book, because it is, at the moment, some of that, what the feedback has told me is that it is indeed a great overview of remote work over the last 10 years. And it is a great overview of the role of the person as people with emotions and human things going through those processes. So it's great, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, look, forget about, no, you've got other books to tell you this, but I am really interested in how individuals navigate this, because it is not an easy experience. And a lot of the time when we've talked about implementing remote work, we haven't talked about the discomfort of some people having to leave behind a way of interacting with people that they value, that they want. Sometimes because they want something else, and you can't have everything. So that's one. Sometimes this fact that everything has a good and a bad side. So how do we navigate the things that are affecting us emotionally, that are getting in the way of just us enjoying remote work or being able to do it in a way that suits us? The relationship with technology and how that can affect our sense of who we are in the world, etc. The different ways of leading, how if we see ourselves as a really hands-on leader, always there to encourage people when they're down, and suddenly we have to be apart from them, and we have to be intentional and deliberate and using processes to communicate with people to show them our warmth and support. It's difficult. So I'm glad all of that seems to be coming through, and that's coming through as well. Thanks to the Shakespeare, which has really enabled me to just double that down on that. So great. What I haven't quite had is, this will be super useful for anyone who wants to take their team remote. I think it will be, because it will give them an understanding of what team members and themselves might well go through. So yes, but I think some of that might need to be made more explicit in a way of really extracting that out of the text, because as you know, I like to go on about stuff. There's no rambling in the book. I really think I've managed to get that out. Doesn't mean there's no tangents, but there's no rambling. And again, many thanks to Andrew, the editor at the publishers, for really pointing out where I was apologizing for XYZ, which is not a bad thing as an author sometimes to say, I've got my limitations, but it was getting in the way of the writing. So all of that, I don't know where I was going with that. Let me have a look at my notes. and see what else. I think there's only one more thing anyway that I wanted to talk to you about today, and that is yes. So so the other thing that happened, and I think I might have already talked to you about it. No, I was talking to my cousins about it. Isn't that funny? The other thing that happened just before Christmas, because I'm recording this on the 21st of January of 2026, is that I went back to the cozy mystery I've been writing to see where I was at. And in a similar way to when I actually left this book, All the World's a Workplace, to one side and came back to it, I thought, okay, there's definitely something in here. Let's finish it. I went back to the cozy mystery and read and went, some of it is really bad. I was reading it going, wow, yeah, what do I do with this? And interestingly, this book, I wrote it in the third person. Then I decided it would be better to write it in the first person. So writing as if I was the main character. And I've gone back and thought, no. What happened was that because I was writing a lot of nonfiction, the nonfiction was in third person mainly because I wasn't coming at it from a very personal point of view. So most nonfiction, a bulk of it is written in the third person. It's not about me, it's about the material. And I'd thought then that it would be really good to write the fiction in first person so as not to get confused with what book I was in. But of course, that was before I decided that what I really like to write is stuff from my own point of view, and I call it memoiresque because it's very memoir-like, and that's what I like to talk about. In fact, I like to talk about business topics or other nonfiction topics through my own lens. And therefore, it's become a very I-led narrative. But I can't now go into the cozy with that as well because I might get confused. And actually what I have realized is that I think I am a third-person writer when it comes to fiction because I want to be a little bit detached from the story. Don't ask me why. The book that I recommended to you right at the beginning of this section, which was written in the first person, that works very well because of the warmth, because the character is a child. I don't know, I think because we are in her memory. That's the thing. We are in the memory of the character, so that I works very well. But the kind of things that I'm wanting to do, they're not hopefully they're a bit warm, but they're not. That's not the feeling I think is going to stay. It's a little bit more. Well, it's a mystery. It's a very formulaic mystery. Cozy mysteries are quite formulaic. So I just think, so I'm going to have to go back to to the manuscript and start again into turning it into third person. I have to say, when I did it the other way around, when I went from third person to first, it's not something I want to do, but it means it's easier to edit when you go in because you're rewriting. Otherwise, when you're editing, trying to change little things, sometimes it's just harder. So actually having something very big to do to a manuscript is easier for me than to do small changes, to make small changes. So we shall see. Anyway, I've managed to ramble on for quite a bit. And I will be back hopefully in 2 weeks, probably not earlier. That would be good, wouldn't it, if I managed to get my act together? Yeah, I've got another book to recommend to you soon, prompted by my friend Mark, who said, why don't you talk about that in your podcast? And I said, yeah, it's a good idea. So I will. All right, everyone, whatever you're doing. No, that's not the one. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.